And the world of high fashion is often perceived as one of the hardest to break into. But Teen Vogue may have just made it a bit easier, for millennials in particular. We're joined today by Amy Astley, Teen Vogue's editor-in-chief, who is here to discuss the Teen Vogue Handbook, an insider's guide to careers in fashion. Amy, thanks so much for being with us.
Hi, Tanya. Thank you.
Tell us what inspired this very useful handbook.
This book was actually inspired by the readers themselves, by the kids. This is the second edition of the handbook. The first edition came out 5 years ago. It was a New York Times bestseller. It was very successful, but it didn't have a lot of digital jobs in it because, can you believe it, they didn't really exist in the same way.
Isn't that fascinating?
Yes.
That's actually one of the sections of your book that I find the most interesting.
Thank you. Good.
So many of those women forged their own career paths.
Yes.
No job interviews required.
Exactly. Well put. They're entrepreneurs. And I think that's really good advice for anyone in their career these days, whether you're young, you're just starting out from college, or a little bit older. Be an entrepreneur, think for yourself, do your own thing, find your own voice. There are a lot of examples.
The Man Repeller, Michelle Kwan.
Even Natalie Massenet, who started Net-a-Porter. When we had her in the book 5 years ago, it was a little known company and people weren't really that aware of her. Now it's a huge company worth, many millions of dollars.
Very inspiring.
Incredibly successful.
Now for some girls though, or young women or young men as well, they may not be as inclined to become entrepreneurs.
Right.
And they want a more traditional path into high fashion.
Yes.
You give plenty of advice for that as well.
Yes.
What is the best piece of advice if you had to single one out?
Well, my top piece of advice for anyone seeking a job is to educate yourself, and certainly if you get that moment where you're in the interview, you're in the internship pool, really research where you're going so you can answer any question and you are well versed in the person you're interviewing with and the company they work for, especially if you're not an entrepreneur and you're coming into someone else's organization.
So do your homework.
Yes, I see it as one of the #1 mistakes people do make in interviews is they aren't able to be specific about why they love that designer, why they love that fashion magazine, and you need to have all those answers and really live it. If someone does, it's incredibly impressive.
And the fashion world can seem to the outsider as being very cliquey and hard to break into. Is that true?
Well, parts of it are hard to break into, for sure. And when we talk about super uber high fashion, it is very elite. So people do have to be a bit realistic about which area is going to be a good fit for them. But their fashion is a huge industry.
I love that you say that because it is a huge industry and it is multifaceted.
Yes.
So if you like to write, you can try and be an editor. If you have a background in visual arts, you can be a stylist or a photographer. So there's many ways in.
Absolutely. Graphic designers. You know, we're hearing about Pantone. I mean, there's a whole world of jobs there. People tend to fixate on a few specific jobs that are glamorous and that are high profile, maybe being a designer, maybe being an editor-in-chief, but there's so many other jobs. It's a huge industry. So the book tries to demystify that, show them the path. And I think the reason that people don't understand how to get into fashion is simply because usually you're not going to school for fashion unless you're going to be a designer and you go to design school.
True.
It's not like becoming a lawyer or a doctor.
Well, your handbook is so useful and it really does demystify the process.
Thank you.
Amy, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.